The wind was sharp that night, carrying the scent of snow and silence through the small Midwestern town of Willow Creek. Streetlights flickered weakly against the dark, and the only glow came from the mason jars that lined the roadside, each one softly shimmering with a golden light. Behind the small wooden table stood a girl of 15. Her name was Elara. She had light brown hair that brushed her shoulders, pale skin that looked even paler under the winter moon, and hazel eyes that seemed to hold their own quiet light. Her old denim jacket was torn at the sleeves, and a red scarf, frayed but carefully wrapped, shielded her from the cold. Elara whispered softly to herself as she lit another jar. Inside, tiny firefly lights danced, battery-powered, flickering through tinted glass. She called them bottled stars. "If people can't reach the stars," she murmured, "maybe I can bring them closer." Cars passed without slowing down. Some people smiled. Most didn't even look. But Elara stood there every night, patient, gentle, her hazel eyes glimmering with hope. She sold each jar for $3. Enough, sometimes, for bread or medicine. Behind her, through the trees, the faint light of a trailer glowed. Inside, her mother lay sick, waiting for medicine they could barely afford. The next night was colder. Snowflakes drifted through the air, landing softly on Elara's red scarf. Her hands were numb, but she smiled when she saw headlights slow down. A woman rolled down her window. In the back seat, a little girl leaned forward, eyes wide. "Mommy, look, she's selling stars." The woman smiled kindly. "You made these yourself." Elara nodded. "Yes, each one's a star that got lost. I just help it find a home." The woman laughed gently, touched by her words. She bought 2 jars. "You have a good heart, sweetheart. Don't stop dreaming." Elara smiled faintly. "Dreams are what keep me warm." When the car drove away, Elara pressed the crumpled bills into her pocket and looked up at the sky. The stars were faint tonight, but she whispered to them anyway. "Someday, I'll have a light that never fades." A week later, a snowstorm hit the town. The wind howled through empty streets, but Elara was still there, standing by her table, breath fogging in the cold, her jars glowing like tiny embers. Most people hurried past, until a man stopped. He looked out of place, tall, wearing a long gray coat, a camera bag slung over his shoulder, his eyes tired but curious. "You out here in this weather?" he asked. Elara smiled faintly. "Stars don't sell themselves." He picked up one of the jars, studying the soft light inside. "You make these?" "Yes, sir. I use old jars, broken lights, and a little imagination." He turned the jar in his hands, watching the glow dance across the glass. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "What's it called?" Elara thought for a moment. "That one? I call it the lost one. It's for people who forget how to find their way back." Something about her words struck him. He reached into his coat and handed her a bill. "How much?" he asked. $3, she said. He handed her 20. "That's too much," she began, but he shook his head. "No, that's not enough." He smiled once, then turned away, his figure fading into the snow. Elara stood still, holding the bill tightly in her trembling hands, as if she'd just met someone from another world. She didn't know his name, but she'd remember his kindness. Weeks passed. Her mother's health grew worse. Medicine costs rose higher. Some nights, Elara couldn't light her jars. The batteries had died, and she couldn't afford new ones. So she sat there anyway, the jars dark, her breath clouding in the icy air. People didn't stop anymore. "Maybe stars get tired too," she whispered. She pressed her scarf closer to her face, hiding her tears. In her pocket, she still kept the old $20 bill the stranger had given her. She couldn't bring herself to spend it. It felt like hope, something fragile, something worth keeping. That night, she saw a reflection in a store window, tired, thin, and still so young. "Don't give up," she told herself softly. "Stars always come back." Months passed. The snow melted. Spring came to Willow Creek. Elara's roadside table became a small stand, decorated with wildflowers. Her jars had changed too. She painted them with tiny constellations, each one telling a story. People began to stop more often, smiling, buying them for gifts or for hope. And one golden evening, as the sun dipped low, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "I see you're still selling stars." Elara turned, and her breath caught. It was him, the man in the gray coat. Only this time, he looked different. Neater, brighter. His camera still hung over his shoulder. "You came back," she said softly. He smiled. "I told you once your stars were beautiful. I wasn't lying." "Do you still want one?" she asked. He shook his head. "Actually, I came to return one." He placed an old jar on the table, the one labeled the lost one. Inside, the light still flickered faintly. "This jar traveled with me everywhere," he said. "I'm a filmmaker." And that night, your words, they became a story. Elara blinked. "A story?" He smiled. "A film, about a girl who sold stars. I called it the star she sold." Elara froze, her heart pounding. "It played at a festival last week," he said softly. "People cried. They asked if the girl was real. I told them yes, and I came back to find her." She covered her mouth, her hazel eyes shining. "You made a movie about me." He nodded. "About your light. The kind that survives even when the world doesn't notice." Months later, Elara stood in a crowded theater, wearing her freshly washed denim jacket and her red scarf. On the big screen, the story played. A young girl standing in the snow, selling jars of light, whispering to the stars. The audience watched in silence, some wiping tears. When the credits rolled, the filmmaker turned to her and whispered, "Sometimes the smallest lights reach the farthest." Elara smiled, her eyes wet. "And sometimes," she said softly, "they come back home." After the show, people surrounded her, asking to buy her real jars. She smiled shyly, cheeks pink with wonder. She didn't know how to handle the attention, but she felt something new growing inside her, belief. Months later, a small shop opened on Main Street. The sign above the door read, "Elara's Lights, where stars find a home." Inside, shelves glowed with jars, painted, shaped, and designed by Elara herself. Some held tiny notes of hope. She hired other poor kids from her neighborhood, teaching them how to make light from scraps, just like she once did. One evening, as the sun set over the snowy hills, Elara stood by the window, same light brown hair, same hazel eyes, same red scarf, watching the town shimmer with tiny lights. "Maybe the stars were never lost," she whispered. "Maybe they were just waiting for someone to see them." A little girl stopped outside with her mother. "Mommy, look, she's selling stars," the girl said. The woman smiled. "No, sweetheart, she's sharing them." Elara smiled softly, her reflection glowing the glass, the light of her jars blending with the stars above. Weeks later, she received a letter. Inside was a photograph, a still from the film, and a short message written in careful ink. "For the girl who sold light to the darkness. Thank you for reminding us that hope can glow from even the smallest jar." Elara placed a photo near her window, where it caught the morning sun. She still worked late nights, still tied ribbons around her jars, still whispered to the sky. But she wasn't selling to survive anymore. She was selling to inspire, to remind others that light exists even in the poorest corners. And in the soft light of dawn, her whisper carried to the quiet town. Even the smallest light can lead someone home, because sometimes the stars we search for in the sky are already right here, in the hands of those who never stop hoping.